Hello, welcome. Welcome, welcome. If you are so inclined, use the chat to tell us where you're tuning in from. I'm here in Seattle. Sarah's in the area. Marianna's in London. Bellevue. All right, I'm going to give it a minute for a couple more people to tune in, and then we will get started. Melbourne, Australia. Okay, you win. What time is it there? It's 6 in the morning, is that right? 6 a.m. Yes, see, I got it. Yay.
Wow.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll let people sort of join us. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Laura Hamilton. I have a bookshop here in Seattle, Washington that's called Book Larder. We sell cookbooks and food writing, and in normal circumstances, we do in-person cooking classes and lots of author talks. And so in the current situation, we've taken all of that to Zoom. So thank you for joining us. It's been so fun to be able to talk with authors all over the world and welcome people from all over the world. So thank you so much for being here. I am absolutely delighted to welcome Marianna Leivaditaki. She is currently chef at Morito in London, and before that was at Moro for a very long time, one of my absolute favorite restaurants in the city. And she is going to be in conversation with Sara Dickerman, who is a local author and who herself helped open a Greek restaurant in Seattle. If you're in Seattle, she helped open Vios several years ago on Capitol Hill. They are going to talk about Marianna's beautiful new book, Aegean, about Crete and the food of Crete. And we are also going to take your questions as the time goes by. So please, if you have questions, use the little Q&A dialog box at the bottom of your screen, because that will make it easier for me to keep track of what's going on. And please use the chat to talk to each other, tell us where you're from, all those kinds of things, because that's a lot of fun as well. The book, of course, is available at our website, booklarder.com, and you can support this author talk by purchasing it from us if you are so inclined. And like I said, just please remember to use that Q&A button for your questions. And with that, I will welcome Marianna and Sara to the conversation.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. And I'm going to go.
Hi.
Hi, Marianna.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Oh, so glad to be here talking with you today. As Laura said, I am not Greek in origin, but I helped start a Greek restaurant. I love the food. I've visited a few times, and I've visited Crete itself, and I just can't wait to learn more about it. So your family's from Crete, and I wondered if you could just kind of sketch where it is and how it is its own distinct place within the broader world of Greece.
Yeah, well, my family is from Crete. My dad is from Crete. My mum was from Scotland, but I've never lived in Scotland. So I was born in Crete, and that's where I was brought up and stayed there until the age of 18. So Crete is this absolutely incredible island on the south of Greece, and it's quite large, but absolutely spectacular because it gives you everything. So you have really high mountains, and you have incredible beaches, and lovely kind of almost forest-like spaces. So within very small distances and very little time, you can be, you know, from swimming in the sea, eating, you know, lamb cutlets with wild oregano in the mountains, which is quite special.
Yeah, that contrast is so remarkable, and it's something you've woven into your book a lot too. You have it's sort of divided by the terrain, right? As
Yeah.
you thought about your cookbook.
Yeah. And I did that because I love that. And the terrain is different, and that difference is very much reflected in the food. So, and the people, you know, and I think it's really important when I was thinking of how I would like to divide this book, and, you know, what do I do? Do I do vegetables and meat and fish? How do I do it? Do I do seasons? You know, how do I make this division? And I think the one that I made from my heart was that one, because the food each area, kind of, whether you're low or whether you're high up in the mountains, you know, is different, and it's almost like a country in itself. So I wanted to speak about that. And I think, you know, the in-between land allows for all the other things, you know, to happen. And yeah, it's something that's special for the island, and it's something that's special in the way I cook and the way I learned to cook.
And what is it that's hardest to hold on to in London about the food and the dining traditions of Crete? When you're in London, what is hardest to recreate or to connect with?
My dad's fish.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, as you know, I've been brought up in a seafood restaurant and with a fisherman dad. So we kind of ate fish 7 days a week all our life. And I really, you know, I really love, it's the food I love eating. You know, I've actually cooked fish for dinner tonight because I found this amazing wild gilt head bream, and I just bought 4 of them and put them under the grill tonight. So what I think, you know, is very important in my diet is what I miss mostly here in London is finding extremely really good fish, which I do, because there is the possibility of doing that here in London, but I miss my dad's fish because it tastes different.
Because of whatever the fish is eating near where it is and where you pull it in, and just maybe even the smell in the air as you eat it, right?
Yeah, I think that the salt levels are different. I think the underwater life is different. I think the food that is available for the fish is different, and there is certainly a difference in change, in a difference in flavor. Yeah.
And that Greek relationship with seafood is so interesting, as coming from the US, wanting to look at the fish before it gets cooked. That's not just in Crete, but elsewhere. You know, you see what you might be eating before the restaurant cooks it for you often. And I love that.
I think it's part of our culture in Greece, and I'm sure there's loads of places like, you know, in fancy restaurants where maybe that doesn't happen in Greece, in the mainland, you know. But I was brought up where in our restaurant, the customer would walk in and my dad's fish would be in a white polystyrene box. So the customer would walk up, would look at the fish, would look in the box, that was today's catch, and would kind of go, I want this one, and I want this one, and that one. And then you would put that fish on the scales, weigh it. The customer was there. You're like, okay, your fish is 2 kilos, fine. Price was per kilo, goes into the kitchen, gets gutted, thrown on the charcoal grill. So, I mean, it's part of the way I was taught to buy fish. But at the same time, being further away from home and not having that luxury, knowing what a fresh fish looks like or should look like means so much if you can see it beforehand, because you can make that decision for yourself.
Okay, so let's go back over that, because I'm sure it's in part of the book, but just like remind everyone, what are you looking for when you go to your fishmonger? What do you want to see in a fish?
I want to see fish that is super kind of bright-eyed, and I will speak about bright eyes in a second because it's very interesting. It's not always the case, but you want your fish to be shiny and clean and stiff. So even if you're not allowed to put the fish in your hand, if you were allowed to put the fish in your hand, you can look at that fish and imagine you want to put it on the palm of your hand and you want your fish to stay there. You don't want it to be floppy. You don't want scales to be missing. You don't want funny patches of it being bashed around. You just want it to look as if it's come out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm saying the eyes are very important, and you want them clean and you want them shiny. But sometimes you get tricked, because depending on the depth of the water that the fish was caught in, sometimes the eyes might be blurry, because coming up with the pressure, the fish has gone, I can say it's been stressed, so the eyes go a bit blurry. But you want to look at it and kind of say, yes, this looks really healthy. Mm-hmm. This looks good. Mm-hmm. And never smells fishy. I think that's important. Fish that smells fishy is not fresh.
Right, right. So on from fish to another great specialty of the sea in Greece and in Crete is the octopus, which is, just on every postcard you can imagine, hanging on lines. And I love that you detailed that process. I've always wondered about it a little bit more. But I'll tell you one thing that I just adored, and you have a recipe in this cookbook, is when you cook the pasta in the sort of broth of the octopus, and so you end up kind of like with a risotto but made with pasta. Can you tell me a little bit about that dish? It's one of my favorite things in the world.
It's absolutely amazing. I mean, it's really rich, the dish is just delicious. So you basically cook octopus with lots of olive oil and red wine, and you can do white wine, you can do whatever you want, but generally you use lots of olive oil, lots of wine, and some aromatics like bay leaf and cinnamon if you want. So you create this really nice broth, and then excuse me, when you sorry, my throat is a little bit tickly, so I'm just having to have a sip of water. Excuse me. So you basically cook you put the pasta in the octopus broth, and you just cook it really gently. So you end up with this really, really thick sauce. And this pasta, like, as you said, it's like a risotto. So thick and rich and just, delicious.
Yeah, I love it. And then there's similar dishes that might be made with lamb in the mountains. You might do a similar process, but just with a different kind of protein.
In the mountains, you'd often find it with orzo.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Just wonderful. Tell me a little more about your family restaurant. I loved one of the recipes you mentioned were the baked potatoes with shrimp. And I just love the image you cast of cooking all those hot potatoes.
I mean, the potatoes are absolutely amazing. So we had this massive grill at the restaurant, and we used to cook, 30, 40 potatoes kind of a night, just they were really popular. And in Crete, people don't eat baked potatoes. So in the winter, in the mountains, sometimes people would throw potatoes in the ash, just to kind of cook them in the ash slowly and then have them like a meze with your raki or, something just like a tiny snack, not a meal. But my mum, being Scottish, brought this baked potato recipe to Crete, or created this idea. And basically we baked all these potatoes under ash, which was incredible. You couldn't find them by the end. You'd always lose a few and find them the next day. And then you'd open them, and we would put lots of kind of fresh salad, fresh lettuce from a friend's garden, homemade mayo, you know. My mum used to put some spicy kind of chilies in there, and then lots of fresh prawns. She used to restuff it. And initially all the customers were like, what is this? I don't eat. What is this? Is no good potato. What is this combination? And then they used to like just come back again and again and go, Nancy, can we have that potato? You know. And it's so funny because it's the only baked potato stuffed that I've ever seen in Greece.
Right.
That was it. So I love it, and I had to include it in the book. And of course, you know, it's like just remembering my mom and saying, well done, you know.
Right, a marriage, and that she could win over your customers with that means that you know, there must have been some harmony that worked in the mind and on the palate.
Absolutely delicious, because the potatoes are cooked in the ash. You get this beautiful aroma that you don't often get, you know, from potatoes cooked in ash, and really fresh prawns, really crunchy lettuce, you know, creamy mayo. I mean, it's heaven, you know. It really, really works. Yeah, great lunch.
And you're from near Hania, is that right?
Yeah, I'm from Hanya. I was brought up in Halepa, which is a neighborhood just about 15 minutes. 15 minutes cycle, not drive, outside of Hanya. It's right by the water, so just kind of it's considered Hanya, you know. It's just a little neighborhood just outside, kind of. And it was an amazing neighborhood. It was an amazing place. The water, you could hear the water from our balcony at night and see it, of course, in the day. But when the weather was really rough at night, you could actually hear the waves. So we're really close, and just very close to a beautiful school, to all our friends. We were just free kids, you know, just roaming around on our bicycles all day, climbing trees and, you know, swimming. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's an incredible city with such a combination of different stories there, different eras of architecture, and all kind of pulled together along the waterfront there. It's so beautiful. Can you still hear me? I'm having a little, my screen is doing something funny. Am I still sounding okay?
I can hear you perfectly, yeah.
Okay, well, I can't see you anymore, but I'll keep on talking. So yes, and tell me, so we've talked a lot about the sea, and let's go up into the mountains, which, as you said, are, you know, quite high. I can't remember the height, but there's even some that are snowy.
Yeah, oh, they're very snowy. They're very snowy. Yeah,
yeah.
they're absolutely amazing. I mean, mountaineering wise, they're you know, people love the mountaineers go up the mountains. There's lots of refuges up there. They go and do free skiing, free snowboarding, freestyling. There's no kind of organized centers, but they're high, they're dangerous, they're really kind of big and scary, and very snowy in the winter.
Right. I mean, there's a sense of so we drove down to Sfakia in the south when I was there, and just those canyons are so isolated, and you know, just it's a completely different mood from many places I've been. And so tell me a little bit about the food as you're high in the mountains, and
well, I think
what's the way of life like there?
Well, I think, you know, as an introduction, the people are different. You start seeing, as soon as you start going up the mountains, you start seeing 4x4 trucks with goats on them. You see men wearing traditionally black shirts, having big moustaches, looking at everyone they don't know very scarily, and being very suspicious of everyone they don't know, being having though at the same time the best faces, the nicest eyes, the most warming, you know, characters. They're incredible. And then, you know, the temperature drops as you go up, the food changes, you know, you stop in tavernas or you stop in caffeina, you know, which are just small, they sound like small cafes, but they're not. They're usually small places where you can have some meze, something small to eat while you sip on some raki, you know, up in the mountains, because that's what you do. You just drink raki most of the time, which is very strong and yes, not very good in big quantities. But, you know, you go up and everything changes. So it's meat, it's wild greens, it's you know, wild kind of onions that have been pickled, there's chestnut stews, there's slow cooked rabbits, there's, you know, lots of lamb on the spit or on the charcoal or in the oven with potatoes. Everything becomes richer.
It's really essential, very, it all feels concentrated when I think of some of that mountain food. It's the perfect food for this season, as we head into fall.
It's absolutely amazing. And, you know, if you go to Crete at this time of year, you know, you might wake up in the morning and go to the harbor, as you said before, and, you know, the architecture is amazing, the buildings, you know, the sun is shining, you know, you might be in a t-shirt, you know, and you're going to go and have a nice cup of coffee. You might even have a nice coffee, you know, forget a hot one, because the weather is just so amazing. The air feels fresh and clean, and, you know, you can see the blue water. And then lunchtime comes and you're like, okay, let's go eat some meat. And you drive up to the mountains and you have to put your jacket on and a jumper on, and, you know, you have to like pull up the windows in your car and get ready for something else, you know. And I think that's the magic, you know, that can happen in Crete. And yeah, I mean, at the moment, that's what I would do. I would have a coffee by the sea and I would go for lunch at the mountains.
So tell me about one of your favorite of the mountain dishes. Can you describe one of them to me?
There's a lot. I love snails very much, but I know they're hard to find. They're not easy to find in Crete either. I mean, you know, they're foraged, so they're only available when they're in season. But I absolutely love having them in the mountains, just with rosemary and wine and olive oil, you know, just almost fried. And I have a recipe of them in Aegean, and it's just incredible. But I think at the same time, what I love having that you don't have very often here in London is lamb cutlets that you order by the kilo. So you don't have a portion. Portions don't exist. You know, the menu will say, okay, you know, so how many are you? 4? Oh, do you want 2 kilos? You want 3 kilos? You know, do you want half a kilo? And they do a similar thing to what we did with the fish. So they butcher the cutlets up in the kitchen. They weigh a kilo. They salt them, put wild oregano, pepper, and throw them on the charcoal, you know. And there's nothing better. The animals are much smaller to the animals that you find here in England. So the cutlets are actually cutlets and tiny, and each bite is just buttery and soft and just delicious.
And what would you eat with those cutlets? What would be on the table as well?
You would always have a nice salad. And if you're lucky, you would go for wild greens. So just greens that are seasonal, and we have them a lot in Crete. They vary what the varieties are depending on when you want them. So in the summer, you get some greens called flita. In the winter, you get other ones called ascrolibi, which is really, they're quite jaggy and thorny. and you have a plate of that, definitely. You would have most probably some cheese and spinach kind of pies on the table that have just been fried. You might have a cold salad as well, and then you definitely have chips cooked in olive oil. I think that's
That,
the most important accompaniment. Yeah.
that sounds incredible. Yes, you talk about orta, or the wild greens, and how they vary seasonally. Are they, and very few meals that I went to wouldn't have some of them on the table. Are they seen as sort of medicinal or food or somewhere in between? It feels like there's a little bit of alchemical appeal to them as well, as part of keeping healthy.
Yeah, I think because everyone that people love them, it's like a staple. You know, people think, they never think, oh, this is a really healthy thing, so I'm having it. People
Hmm.
have them because they just love them.
Hmm.
I think what happens is they become an exciting dish, even the most boring thing ever in terms of cooking, or, you know, you just boil them in salty water. You
Hmm.
take them out, you put olive oil and lemon, you know, that's all you do to them. But I think people become excited because they change with the seasons, you know, so it really, you know, and every variety has a very different flavor, and you know, so they become this thing that you're like, okay, summer's coming, okay,
Hmm.
autumn, yeah, we're going to get this, you know. And then you'll always have a family friend who goes and picks for them themselves. So they're pretty amazing. At the same time though, they're really medicinal. You know,
Hmm.
like if you get real horta that has been foraged from a remote place and they're proper wild, you will never throw the water that they were boiled away. You will
Hmm.
keep the water, you will put it in bottles, you will put it in the fridge, and you will drink it every day with, you know, if you want to add salt and lemon to the water, you can, but you just drink it because it's meant to be just really good and full of antioxidants and super healthy.
That sounds great. Another ingredient I saw you used as a seasoning, and I hadn't seen that before, is the mountain tea. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I mean, mountain tea malotira is just amazing, and I just consider myself so lucky to have had it from such a young age and been brought up with it. Firstly, this is really medicinal, you know, so it's very good. I remember when we were young, any cold, any symptom, anything that was wrong with you, a big mug of malotira, the Cretan mountain tea, would be brought to you, and it would have, you know, loads and loads of honey in it, you know.
Hmm.
And they would say, you drink it while it's hot, you drink it while it's hot, you know. And as you became older, they might, you know, throw a shot of whiskey in it as well or something, you know, like a hot toddy. But it's an amazing herb. It's when you read about it, it's meant to be good for 1,000 things, you know, um, which is, you know, it happens quite often when you read about herbs. But um, the flavor, the aroma is just so subtle, and it's almost flowery but herby, and has something like a stone fruit kind of smell coming through. You know, it's quite subtle and very pleasant to drink. And it's also really lovely to use as a seasoning, you know, or to add to cooking, you know. And I often, you know, I might put some in stuffing in a bird, or, you know, just add some in a soup, you know, just to get this very slight kind of aroma that comes from it. But the best way to have it is to drink it as a tea, with
Hmm.
honey or without. You know, it's just delicious.
Hmm. It is. I can agree with you, and often have it at night. Um, and then, so let's also talk about sweets, of course. Sweets, is there sort of an overall um, approach in Crete to sweets, or does it depend on the day and whether it's a feast day?
I mean, people eat a lot of sweets. they eat quite a lot of syrupy sweets, almost, like they do in Turkey. And things like baklava, or like hot custard kind of encased in syrupy phyllo, like we call it a milk pie in Greece. And they do love sweets, but I don't think there is such a big sweet culture as there is in other places. So for example, when you go to a restaurant and you eat, it's kind of rare that they will have puddings on the menu or desserts on the menu and you will be able to choose. It just doesn't happen. So everyone will want something sweet at the end of their meal, but they might bring some fresh fruit, they might bring some yogurt with a spoon dessert. And it's very simple when you are eating out. It's not made a big thing. But at home, people love making sweets, and I've got the orange and phyllo pie I've got in Aegean, which is, it's just delicious. You'll have that and you'll have it sitting there and it will last for 2 or 3 days. And you just walk past and have a bit, or someone will come for a coffee and you'll offer a sweet. But I wouldn't say we're very big in sweets in Crete.
That pie looks just incredible. It's shredded bits of phyllo, and then the batter kind of settles in around it. Is that correct?
Yeah. So you shred or chop the phyllo and then you dry it out in the oven, so it's almost like crispy, no color, but just for it to dehydrate 100%. And then you create this batter with all the other ingredients and you fold the two together, and the result is incredible. It's such a good dessert.
It just I mean, I can't, that's I got this book a little too close to our conversation to be able to already cook, but that's the one I've already earmarked to jump in and get going on that, because it just, I love interesting textures and I just think that looks amazing. But I will say the one that made me smile the most is that you, because again, when I was in Hanya, I went to the bakery you talked about that makes the great Bougatsa. So can you tell us also what Bougatsa is like? And just a little bit, because it's a great combination, again, of textures and with something a little salty, something a little sweet.
I think Bougatsa is more of my kind of sweet. So it's not 100% sweet, it's salty. I've never had a sweet tooth. And I do enjoy something sweet, but I like it to be on the savory side, if that makes sense. So Bougatsa is the best pastry I have ever tried. So there's this bakery in Hanya in the center called Iordanis, and Iordanis is the surname of the family, and it's been in the family for, I don't know, 150 years, I'm not sure, but a lot of years. So they only do Bougatsa. They only do this thing. You can't have anything else in this place. So you go in and everyone is really moody. No one is really friendly. No one is, hi, how are you? Good morning. It's usually morning. They shut at 2 p.m. So you don't get greeted with, with a smile. You know this, they're not going to cheer you up. The Bougatsa is going to cheer you up. So you know this before you walk in. So you go in, they're like, hi, there, you can sit there. Okay, you sit yourself down, and they ask you how much you want. And you see the old lady kind of with this special, amazing knife chopping the pie into these perfect squares that she's done for 50 years, every single day. And then it comes, laced in caster sugar. And you can have a glass of tap water with it or a Greek coffee, and that's it. There's nothing else, so they watch you eat it, because as soon as you have your last piece, they want you up and they want you out, you know. So it's quite amazing. You're sitting there, you're enjoying this thing, you came in for this, no one's very friendly, but you're eating it and it's incredible, and then you're like, please don't finish because I have to go immediately, you know. So it's fantastic. And the recipe is a massive secret. I've had friends who've worked there as delivery drivers. I've had friends who've worked and kind of waited and cleared tables. They're like, there is no way, Marianna, there is no way we can get this recipe. So basically I was like, okay, fine. So I tried and tried and tried, and most probably if I ever get their recipe, mine might be completely different, but the result is very similar.
Oh,
So
good.
the flavor you get is really similar. So I'm really happy, but it took a very long time, and it's just incredible. You know, it's crispy on the outside, just soft cheese, slightly salty, with lots of sugar. It's just, yeah, it's the best breakfast ever.
Yeah, my dream is to travel around Greece again, only eating pies of that, both sweet and savory.
That's a good one.
Because everywhere you go, there's just a slight variation that sort of says this is where you are now, and when you taste it, you know you're in that particular
And
environment.
that's amazing, isn't it? It's like a pie is, you know, is a stamp, you know, every village, every area, you know, just has all these kind of variations, as you said. And Greece, like in the north of Greece, you know, there's amazing pies made, like amazing, with meat and mince and bechamels, and just they're on a different level, you know. They've really taken pie seriously. And you know, when I went to the north of Greece, I was quite shocked. I was like, wow, okay, I've never had anything like this before, you know. And they're like, oh, we have this twice a week, this is what we do all day, you know. So it's a very good trip to organize, actually, Sarah. I think you should definitely go pie eating around.
Okay, well, maybe you can join me for part of it when we can all travel a little more easily. Well, so why don't I mean, I didn't mention, because we've been talking about food and I'm so hungry again. The photographs are just incredible. They look like they're all naturally lit and in the environments that you're describing. What was your thought process, and tell me about your relationship with the photographer?
I am extremely lucky, because I had a vision for this book, and it's my first cookbook. I love writing, but I never thought I would be asked to write a cookbook. So when it came to me, I was just honored. I was anxious. I didn't know what to answer. So it was just an incredible opportunity for me. And then came the Marianna that was like, but I just really don't want to write a cookbook that has just recipes and photos set up in a funny way that I see quite often. I just don't want this, you know. And how will I ever get this? How can I convince these people that don't even know me very well and have offered me to write a book? So I had this really open conversation with our publishers, who are amazing, absolutely incredible. I could not have asked for anyone better to work with. And you know, I said it has to be real. It has to be like a journal. I have to write my stories. I want to mention, you know, the pictures that I've created in my head, you know. So they were really open for all of this. And I think they really understood, you know, that this is what I want to do and this is how I'd love to do it. And they embraced it and they allowed me, and I will be forever grateful. So, you know, I wrote my recipes based on my childhood memories and current memories, on trips, with stories that are really important. And that's one part of it. And then the photographs, you know, I met Elena Heatherwick, who is the most amazing photographer I have ever met. And I love her so much for all the work she put into Aegean, because she's done an incredible job. And I think, you know, we clicked, and Elena knows what I wanted, and she's also sensitive like me and quite feels the emotions from the heart, you know, so she understood what this means, and she just conveyed it in the best possible way. And there was nothing lit and nothing staged, and every dish was cooked and then eaten by all of us, and you know, and could be eaten. Nothing was, you know, sprayed or put here, a special light there, or you know, it was just, everyone worked so hard to make this happen, and it's just completely 100% authentic.
Yeah, I love that there's a great image of the snails cooking over a propane tank with, you know, wine in a plastic bottle, and just great. It's a real sense of place.
And I think that's amazing that those, you know, I bought those snails from the market and the wine, you know, and we cooked them in the field and we ate them.
Wonderful. So we should open up to questions in one moment, but I was thinking, because you're in London and I know that you and Lara had been talking a moment before, you're running a restaurant in London, which is, we just thought I'd love to know what it feels like there right now, given the pandemic and given all the uncertainty. How are things going?
Things are, you know, they're quite tough. I mean, it's just very hard for all of us. I think it's the first time anything like this has ever happened, you know, so everyone is in quite a strange situation, not really knowing what is going on. And I think the uncertainty is the most worrying thing, because we don't know what way things will go. So here in London, you know, we are fortunate to be able to be open. So the restaurant is open with limited capacity, following obviously all the health and safety rules surrounding COVID. You know, everything is in place. New regulations came in last week where we have to shut earlier now. So we're just trying to adapt. This is just completely new. It's like, you know, it feels really strange. You know, you're walking down the street and everyone is wearing a mask. You know, we don't hug each other. We don't, you know, it's just very strange. And I think for the restaurant world, it's dangerous as well, because we've seen a lot of places that have shut. A lot of businesses that, even though it was someone's life dream, you know, and it's something they've kind of worked and built and they want to create, they've had to stop it, you know, because it just didn't survive, you know, through this. So I think the financial impact is enormous in the industry. And I think, you know, everyone is just trying to be obviously hopeful and positive, but it's just uncertain and quite scary, to be, you know, to be honest. So we're taking every day as it comes, and we're trying to look after our guests, be safe, look after each other, and still make amazing food and have a laugh, you know. And I think we'll keep doing that as long as we can.
Yes, well, we all wish you so much luck, and it is the confounding part of this pandemic has been that so many of our impulses, especially as food people, to bring people together, to share, to be close, to talk, to laugh, all those things are things that are at varying points maybe hard to do given the health concerns. And so it's just a real pickle for everyone on both in London and here in Seattle. I will say that the book is a great comfort if you can take it home and you can cook for your people in your family or in your bubble and do a little bit of travel from home. So that is a great thing about having the book, and to be able to hear your voice so strongly in the writing. As I said before, my screen for some reason isn't working. So Laura, are there any questions coming in from our questions?
Yes, there
are.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little echo. So let's see. Melissa and Patrick in Seattle say, "Hi, Sarah." They say they haven't seen the book yet, but are wondering how you approach vegetarian cooking and maybe how friendly Crete is for vegetarians.
Very. I mean, I've had this conversation quite a few times, and I think if you ask someone from Crete and you say, you know, vegetarians, you know, people who don't eat meat and fish, they go, oh no, no, absolutely not. What is that? That's not right. And if you look closely in their diet, you will see that most probably 5 days a week, they're vegetarian. So vegetables are massive. You know, you will have pulses cooked very slowly, like whether it's like baked butter beans or chickpeas, you know, slow cooked with celery and carrots, you know, and you will have that as a meal. It's not part of a meal, it's your meal, you know, with a salad and a nice big chunk of fresh bread, you know, and that's it. So it's completely vegetarian, whether you have stuffed vegetables, whether you have, you know, seasonal greens, whether you have fried vegetables, like we do these amazing fried courgettes and you just have them with loads of tzatziki and they're delicious. You know, vegetables are massive, and Greek food in general, I think, is very, very vegetarian. And
sorry, Marianna, doesn't some of that have to do also just because people are often observing religious fast days as well? So I often found it's not only vegetarian, but there's plenty of vegan options even.
Yes, there's lots of religious fasting going on, especially, I mean, maybe not so much in our generation, but a little bit older people, they fast quite a few times a year. And the more serious it is, the more, you know, vegan it becomes. So, you know, there's parts where you're not allowed, you know, olive oil, you know, and it's just like, why wouldn't you eat olive oil? Because it's too good and it gives you so you know, so it's quite interesting. But the vegetable dishes available are just, you know, there's a plethora of them. There's thousands of them. I think, you know, you don't have to eat meat or fish. I mean, you do because it's nice and it's a choice, but if your choice is not to, you will never get bored of dishes, I think.
No, and just as someone who's not an expert but who did travel there, I mean, I was there with friends who had vegetarian diets, and that's basically, I mean, I sprinkled in some seafood because of course I couldn't resist, but basically there's so much variety, and it's really hearty and satisfying. Vegetarian meals are available, and there's plenty of recipes in your book, you know, giant beans, which are one of my favorite things in the entire world. And as you said, your fritters, and there's plenty of options in the book itself.
And I think also what's important is, like, you might see things in the book that have something that you're, oh, you know, I like this, but I don't like the idea of that. And I think just be creative and kind of go, okay, I'll take that out and what can I replace it with, you know, and you can make things that might have meat, you can kind of make them without the meat, you know. There's some pulses with some smoked pork belly. Take the belly out, you don't really need it. Yes, it adds something to the meat lovers, but they're delicious, you know, the meal's delicious without it. So be creative when you're looking at something, and just be experimental, you know, and move things around to make it suit, you know, what you want to eat actually.
All right, we have a few sort of food specific questions. Angela, who in the chat says she is a Greek American in San Francisco, says that she has come across recipes for Cretan chickpea and other legume stews with honey. Is this a common approach? And if so, can you elaborate?
I don't, well, I haven't come across chickpea stews with honey, but I have come across using pulses with meat dishes and using honey in that. So, but when you're cooking them as vegetarian, I haven't come across the addition of honey, but why not? You know, we always want a little bit of sweetness, and sometimes, you know, when our stews are tomato based, the acidity of the tomatoes vary, and very often you feel even recipes to say like add a pinch of sugar. So why not honey? I see it working very well. The recipes I've seen lots of honey in are recipes with pork and recipes with lamb, where, you know, they're done in the oven, they're slow cooked, and the addition of honey just adds that kind of caramelization and aroma and sweetness to the dish. But yeah, use honey, absolutely use honey if you think, instead of, you know, another sweetening agent, because it's delicious and you also get the flavor.
Right. And Mary Kay would like to know, what cheeses are made in Crete?
Oh, so we have quite a lot of cheeses. So we have cheeses that are aged. So we call this, for example, the most typical and most famous one is Agravieira, which is sheep's milk. And it's usually, you can buy it in different stages. So you can get Agravieira that is aged less, it's fresh and slightly softer. It's still a hard cheese, it's still considered a hard cheese, but it's not so kind of strong in flavor. And you can get Graviera that is so mature that it makes the roof of your mouth itchy. So you have it, and then you kind of with your tongue want to scratch because it's just so strong. And that's one amazing cheese. I use it in pies. I use it on grating on top of, you know, rice dishes, pasta dishes, stews. I love a lamb stew with like grated Graviera on top. So it's almost it's similar to what, you know, pecorino is really in Italy in a way. And then we make really beautiful fresh cheeses. So we make cheeses like misitra, which is like a fresh goat's curd, and we use it in our Cretan salads, which is usually served with barley rusks, like loads of olive oil and salt and oregano. And we make another cheese which is called anthotyros, and this is a very kind of just set cheese, which is so delicious, and you often fry it. So you dip it in flour, or you can dip it in egg and then in flour, and then you fry it and have it with honey. And at the restaurant in London, I actually use it for breakfast, and I just grill it. So keeping it healthier, not deep frying, not creating all that chaos, I just grill it, and it's just milky, just firm, honey and a slice of toast, amazing. So the main three cheeses are Graviera, which is sheep's cheese, mature, misitra, which is goat's cheese, really soft, and anthotyros, which is a fresh sheep's milk usually.
That sounds amazing. I want that for breakfast tomorrow.
It just reminded me, can you tell us about, there's great wines being made in Crete, and sort of some of the young natural wines are coming from there. Are there any that you particularly love?
Well, the really traditional table wine that comes from Crete and is made by many is what we call a marouvas, which is an aged red wine. It's amber actually in color. It's not red and it's not white. It's orange, but not orange in what orange wine is known to be these days. So it is absolutely amazing. It tastes as if it's fortified. So it almost tastes a little bit like a dry Spanish sherry. Not a sweet sherry, but so it's got quite a strong percentage of alcohol, and it has this really, really beautiful aroma attached to it. So this is a table wine that you have everywhere. I mean, the quality varies, you know, because every household thinks, so whoever makes this wine, you know, will say, oh, my wine's amazing, my wine's amazing. You might have a glass and, you know, you're like, absolutely not drinkable, you know, but most of the time you find really good ones. And I think the nice thing is that, you know, these wines have started being bottled because they are special. So there's some producers and some wineries, you know, that are actually bottling these amazing kind of really traditional flavored wines, you know, and that's fantastic. But yeah, Cretan wines, there's some good, very good wineries at the moment producing really exquisite wines, and I try and bring quite a few here in London for the restaurant, because it's just exciting having a wine from home.
All right, and we have time for just one last question here. Alexia says, thank you for your wonderful book. We were due to be in Greece this year, but are stuck in Australia, so it's allowed us to travel there from our couch a bit. When I think of Crete, I think of oranges and orange peel a lot. Are there any other aromatics that you think characterize Cretan food in particular?
Orange peel. I love that that's your picture, because I love it too. I actually take the peel off every orange that I eat, and I eat quite a lot because I've got a baby son in the house at the moment. So and we hang them on a little metal kind of, it's not a string, it's like a metal rod, very thin, and we hang them above the oven in the kitchen, so we have them all year round, and put them in stews, in cakes, in syrups. I use them everywhere. So amazing you love the orange. And aromatics, you know, I think things like, you know, the wild teas that we spoke about before, you know, it's not only the malotira, you know, you can get things like fliscuni and marjoram and, you know, beautiful oreganos and incredible wild mint, you know, and you can have access to those where you're at. You know, you can get these Greek products, and I think they're beautiful to have, you know, in your larder and just use them. In terms of other aromatics, you know, I always keep the peels of everything. I keep the peels of lemons, I keep the peels of limes. And in Crete, we often have these trees that when you look at them, you don't really know if they're a lemon or a lime. And I don't think anyone knows if they're a lemon or a lime, but there's something in between. They're as big as a lemon, but they're green like limes, and they smell half and half. And, you know, that's a great one. Next time you're there, just try and find some of those. Bergamots, incredible, you know, peel to keep. And yeah, into other things, I don't know, I use lots of gum mastic in my sweets and my cakes. I powder it up and put it in bread doughs, in custards, you know. That's what comes to mind now. Hope that helps.
All right, all of that just sounds so lovely, and I completely agree with Alexis that the book is just such a wonderful. It's wonderful anyway, but it's sort of extra wonderful now that we're all sort of stuck where we are. I think a lot of us are sort of looking to books to take us places, and I really appreciate the very strong sense of place in your book and the beautiful photography and recipes, and so thank you so much for that, Marianna. And the book is
you.
called Aegean. It is available at booklarder.com. Thank you so much, Marianna, for joining us all the way from London in the evening, and Sara for joining us and conducting this interview despite all your technical difficulties. You did an amazing job, so thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a lovely day.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very
Great talking with
much.
you.
Thank you.